Hi, I'm going to actually present to you via a webcam because I tried using a phone and I couldn't capture all the slides with the phone. So I'm going to use a webcam and I will show myself presenting as well as the slides in transition. Okay, today I'm going to present about an article. I've done an article review about an article which is entitled Measuring Macroeconomic and Financial Market Interdependence. This is actually a critical survey which was done by Linyue, Zhang, and Thomas D. Willett. Okay, first of all, I would like to explain to you the meaning of interdependencies. Interdependencies, in a layman's term, we can call it like a relationship between two economies and relationship between two financial markets or more than two financial markets, right? We usually compare the stock market performance in different countries. Sometimes we compare the stock market performance in Malaysia and the stock market performance in Japan. So we can observe what are the changes that occur in our stock market when something happens in Japan or something happens in China. So these are the sort of things we call as interdependencies. So why the author, not just the author, many other authors are interested to study this matter because of the recent crisis, okay, the recent subprime crisis that happened in the US, whereby a lot of mortgage loans, right, were defaulted. Due to that, there was a big financial crisis in the US. Not just in the US, there were crises in other countries as well. And the study of interdependencies are also important. For example, for a person who's buying stocks, right? They would like to look at what kind of stocks they can actually accumulate in their portfolio, whether the stocks can get profit or whether their stocks cannot get profit. So they want to look how the different stocks actually work together. So these are the importance of studying interdependence. Okay, so in economy, they usually have measurements to measure these interdependencies. They have different mathematical models to measure these interdependencies. So what the authors have done is they have actually looked at the same set of methods used by different authors from different literatures. So they have actually looked at these methods and they tried to review the methods used. Okay, basically the study is about that. They reviewed the methods used to measure the interdependencies between financial market and economies. Okay, uh, when they are actually measuring these interdependencies, they are looking at results in terms of business cycle synchronization, recoupling or decoupling, or the extent of financial and economic integration and contagion. Now, what is the meaning of business synchronization? Business cycle synchronization is like up and down of a business cycle. So they look at different cycles in an economy of a country and they look at how it correlates with each other. Recoupling or decoupling is like how the trends of certain stocks or certain economies look as if they are close together, look as if like they trend the same, or they do not trend the same. So these methods are used to study how these stocks and economies behave in terms of business cycle, synchronization, recoupling, decoupling, and contagion. Contagion is something like if there's something happens in a country, like a crisis, how it affects the other countries. Okay. Now, what are the measurements used by the authors, right? So, what are the measurements that the author has surveyed? He has surveyed on correlation analysis, he has surveyed on panel analysis, he has surveyed on vector autoregression, VAR, and finally factor analysis. Okay, so he has basically outlined the major types of measurement and discussed the strength and weakness. Okay, the author has definitely stated the problem in the article. The problem is clearly stated. The study of interdependencies among economies and financial market is important because, for example, if there is a bankruptcy in a bank, it leads to a major crisis in a country. So definitely, the author has clearly stated the problem. Um, and because we are living in an increasingly multipolar world, definitely economic issues are of relative significance for us. Okay, as I've said earlier, the purpose of the paper is actually to review the different methods used to measure interdependencies. So the hypothesis of the article, which is clearly stated, the hypothesis is that there is still considerable disagreement among experts about the strengths of some important forms of interdependence. Okay, uh, because some authors feel that there is interdependencies, means there is some kind of relationship between economies. Some authors feel that no, certain countries are strong by their own, they are not so dependent if some crisis happens elsewhere, so nothing changes in that country. So there's always argument. And moreover, there's also a hypothesis: if we use different sets of countries and time periods, data sets from different countries and time periods, we get different results. And if we use different methods, okay, we are using correlation or we're using VAR, we also get different results even though we're using the same set of data. So this is what the author is actually studying, looking at the methods. Okay, some of the key terms that the author has used are macroeconomics, financial markets, econometrics, interdependence, contagion, and financial crisis. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the literature review. Definitely the author has taken relevant literatures for this study because his survey is based on, mainly focused on the literatures. His samples are all from the literatures themselves. So definitely all the literatures are pertinent to the study, are very, very relevant to his survey. Okay, and most of the references also use the same methods that are used in studying interdependency. So they are all the common methods that are used. So not different methods. Okay, so and the author also has not made the article too broad, right? Because why he did not make it too broad? Because he's only studying at the same set of methodologies used, right? And it's also not too narrow, meaning that he did not concentrate his study on just a specific economy or a specific country. So he's talking in general about all economies, but he's using a set of methods. Okay, and the references that he used, most of it are recent references. Only a few, I think about 5 or 6, that are quite old, like references taken from the 1990s. Okay, and the author is not biased as well because he is not providing any strong opinion himself or herself. Okay, the author is just reviewing the methods used, so just giving explaining about advantages. And okay, now we're going to talk about the design methodologies or procedures used by the author to do this article. Okay, first of all, the author has done it in a very simple manner. He has reviewed, or he has broken down the methodologies into correlation, co-integration, panel analysis, VAR analysis, and dynamic factor analysis. So what he has done is actually he has reviewed them separately and against each other so that he can come up with the advantages and disadvantages. First, he looked at correlation. Correlation is something very common that we use, like the stock movement, how they move, two stocks move against each other. And he also has studied another method which is called as DCC-GARCH method. And when he compared the DCC against the simple correlation method, he found the DCC to be much better because one of the literatures, the DCC method was actually used to study how the Asian financial crisis affected the. Okay, and then finally, the last method that was reviewed by the author was the dynamic factor analysis. Dynamic factor analysis, if we look at it, it's a very important factor to study business cycle synchronization. So as we can see that the author has actually reviewed the different methods separately and against each other. Okay, now we shall move on to the data analysis and presentation part. As we can see, the data was, after he compared the methods in terms of advantages and disadvantages, he actually went in to elaborate on how the methods are used to study all the concepts that I've mentioned earlier, the business cycle synchronization, coupling and decoupling, and contingent effects. So the data were studied or analyzed in terms of these aspects. And as we can see, the data was qualitative, meaning to say the survey was done in a qualitative manner. He used all the different literatures and he reviewed the literatures, and he took out all the methods used in these literatures and he reviewed them based on the pros and cons of these methods. So it's a qualitative analysis, and of course the findings did support the hypothesis. The hypothesis was that initially there's a disagreement as to whether there is interdependencies. So when the data was analyzed, it was found that some markets are substantially influenced by international influences. Some markets are not as strong as to completely dominate the national performance. And also, as I've explained earlier, different data sets used by different estimation techniques give different results. So it's very important for further research to be done on this matter. Okay, now we have finally arrived at the conclusion of the article review. Of course, the article is about studying, the purpose of the article is about studying the different methodologies used to measure interdependencies, and the author has definitely achieved that and also have recommended for future research on the subject. But what the author did not do is that the author did discuss about the strengths and weaknesses of the different methods in a table separately. However, they did not conclude the findings in the conclusion section. So maybe I personally feel that they should have discussed about the strengths and weaknesses in the conclusion. And the author also has mentioned about the difference of static and dynamic correlation. However, he has failed to conclude which estimation techniques will measure accurately interdependencies between financial market and economies. For example, for the same economy, which one will be a better measurement? Definitely the author has emphasized about the implications of the measurements, because VAR analysis is so important to study the US stock market movements on Asian markets during financial crisis, as well how the US equity market behaves in relation to Asian equity markets during crisis. So definitely the author has emphasized all this importance. Okay, with that I shall end my presentation, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.